We will ask those questions now of Kim Stevens. He is an attorney from Athens, Georgia, in Clark County there. He represents Jonathan Taylor. And he's kind enough to join us right now. Kim, how are you today? We appreciate you joining us.
No, I'm good. Just driving. What?
Okay, well, Kim, I guess first of all I should ask, what's your reaction to the news coming out this afternoon that the University of Alabama says that Jonathan Taylor is no longer enrolled as a student and is no longer eligible for readmission?
I'm disappointed, but not surprised. The Department of Education several years ago issued a dear colleague letter, if you will, to all of the colleges and universities around the country that has resulted in male students primarily, but some females, being dismissed from university whenever allegations of domestic violence or sexual misconduct come up. So I was hoping that this wouldn't happen, but I'm not surprised.
Again, we're visiting with Kim Stevens, the attorney for Jonathan Taylor, here on WNSP. Kim, have you spoken since the news came out that Jonathan's accuser had recanted her story? Have you spoken to anyone from the university, from the athletic department, or from the Tuscaloosa Police Department?
I've not. And I don't represent him on the Alabama charges of that case. So I wouldn't have had any reason to talk to anybody in the police department, but I've not talked to anybody from the athletic department of the university.
Were you surprised, Kim, and did you talk to anyone after the original charge on Saturday night, after the original arrest, and he was charged, and the next morning Alabama released a statement that said he was dismissed from the football team? Were you surprised at that decision at that time?
Not in light of the firestorm related to domestic violence that has been going on ever since the NFL things happened, I guess. But I knew that Jonathan had strict criteria placed on him, conditions placed on him, things that he had to do before Alabama would admit him. My understanding was that he was meeting all of his obligations that had been placed upon him until the allegations and accusations were made against him in the new case. I don't think it left Alabama with much of a choice but to suspend him. Obviously, I would have hoped that they would have taken a little more time to investigate, and then perhaps once the young lady recanted and admitted that she had made the story up and lied to the police, that then it wouldn't have been in such a tight situation as far as having to leave him off the team and then ultimately the university, of course, kicking him out of school.
Nick Saban did say on Monday at his press conference, Kim, that Jonathan had done everything they'd asked of him up to that alleged incident on Saturday night. Can you share with us at all any of the criteria that they placed on him? The zero-tolerance policy was the way Nick Saban described it. Can you share any of those details on what he was required to do to be at Alabama?
Yeah, I think that he was obligated to have counseling, to go through anger management program. I know that I'm not sure whether there was any kind of family violence intervention program involved in it, but I know he had an anger management program and ongoing counseling, and obviously he had to meet all the other requirements that team members are placed on team members regarding practice and workouts and things like that, attending class. So I think they had pretty good supervision over it. In hindsight, I wish that he had chosen not to be involved in any sort of relationships or anything of that nature, and he would have been in better shape than would be in this situation.
We're visiting with Kim Stevens, an attorney for Jonathan Taylor. Kim is out of Athens, Georgia, in the Clark County area there, here on WNSP. Kim, can you tell us the young woman who accused Jonathan on Saturday night and then recanted her story? She was described in the police report as his girlfriend. The charge against him at Georgia was described as involving a girlfriend. Can you tell us, is it the same young woman, or are these two different individuals we're talking about?
Definitely two different individuals.
Okay. And can you tell us I know a lot of people, and I've shared this opinion as well, questioned why Alabama would admit Jonathan in the first place to the university and to the football team. given that the charge against him there in Georgia is unresolved, where does that charge stand?
Arraignment scheduled on Tuesday, which is kind of like the kickoff of the case, formal case, I guess, if you will. There was some delay or drag time between the original arrest and arraignment and the indictment being returned because the DA's office, the original indictment had some technical issues that they wanted to correct. So they presented the case again to the grand jury, and the new indictment was returned with one felony, two misdemeanor charges. And so on Tuesday, we'll be entering a not guilty plea to the charges and start the process of moving the case forward to resolution, whether it be via trial or getting something worked out.
Do you anticipate now is there any way to know whether it will proceed all the way to trial, or do you anticipate that there could be a plea agreement at some point?
Most cases end up being worked out. I guess if I had to predict, I would say that we'll end up being able to get something worked out that keeps him from having any sort of felony on his record and avoids any kind of confinement time. But that being said, the DA's office has to make an offer that we find acceptable before it can be worked out. So until that happens, we'll be preparing for trial and completing our investigation if there's any further investigation that needs to be done, and plan on going to trial.
Kim, you said at Tuesday's arraignment you'll be entering a plea of not guilty on the charges against Jonathan Taylor in Georgia. Do you believe he's innocent of those charges?
I do. I don't think that John is the kind of person that would strike a woman. In my dealings with him, he's been gentle. He's been kind, almost to a point of being surprisingly gentle. When you look at him, you see his eyes and know that he plays football and those kind of things. Know what he does on the football field. He's completely different in my dealings with him. So I'd be shocked if the allegations and accusations that were made in this case or in the Alabama case before they were recanted were true.
Have you spoken to Jonathan since the arrest on Saturday night?
I've had contact with him, yes.
I know there are certain things you can't reveal, obviously attorney-client privilege, but based on your conversations with him, do you believe that the accuser was telling a story or telling a lie when she said that a verbal confrontation on Saturday, or she originally said a verbal confrontation turned physical?
I think that what she said in her recantation is what truly happened. Jonathan was adamant in denial of anything happening and said that he absolutely didn't have any kind of contact with her that would be inappropriate. So, I think that the things that she said in her follow-up interviews with the police are accurate, and obviously the police believe them to be accurate, and that's why they charged her with making false statements in her first statement.
We're visiting again with Kim Stevens. He's an attorney for Jonathan Taylor, talking here on WNSP. Kim, does Jonathan have any potential legal recourse in terms of his situation at Alabama? As we said, the university announcing this afternoon that he's no longer a student there, is not eligible for readmission, even though the accuser in this case has recanted her story. Does he have any potential legal recourse there against the university, the athletic department, or any individuals at Alabama?
I know that he wouldn't have any recourse as to the athletic department or the football program because you don't have any kind of constitutional right to be a part of the team. The university, though, presents a different question because he is entitled to due process before any expulsion could take place from the university, and I'm not aware of what process has been provided to him. I know he's not had a hearing. I don't know whether he's been made aware of any witnesses against him other than the young lady who admitted that she didn't tell the truth now. So as to the university, I think that there potentially could be some recourse related to due process being denied, but whether Jonathan would want to pursue that or not is a different question. would guess that he's more likely to want to try and move forward rather than be bogged down in litigations for years trying to re-enter the university, and the university family doesn't want him to be there.
Have you had a chance to speak to him today since this news came out?
I've not. I've been in court all afternoon.
Kim, yesterday, an interesting development in the story that a spokesperson for the Tuscaloosa Police Department held a press conference and said the charges that just because the accuser had recanted her story didn't mean that the charges would be dropped necessarily. He said they're continuing to investigate. And then he said something very curious. He said, I believe something happened on Saturday night. What's your reaction to that statement?
I'm sure something did happen, but I don't think that John did anything that amounts to criminal misconduct. It's very common in domestic situations, domestic violence situations, or allegations of domestic violence situations for the person who is the accuser or victim, obviously in a lot of cases, to recant and say that they didn't tell the truth to start with. They do it for a lot of reasons. They do it because they want to stay in the relationship with the person. They do it because they have been maybe a child of an abusive situation, things of that nature. But they also do it because they recant because they don't tell the truth to start with, and they don't realize the ramifications of their story and untruthfulness until they aren't angry anymore. And so I don't disagree with the police in Tuscaloosa when they say that cases don't always get dismissed based on recantation because there's so many reasons that people change their story. But one of the reasons that I've seen over and over again in the 22 years I've been practicing is that the people didn't tell the truth to start with. And that's what I think happened here.
We're visiting with Kim Stevens, an attorney for Jonathan Taylor. Kim, we've got to run to a break. Can you hang on through the break? There are a few more things I'd love to ask you about.
I can.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Again, we are talking to Kim Stevens. He's an attorney for Jonathan Taylor, representing him on the charges against him in the state of Georgia. We've got to run to a break. We will continue this conversation when we come back. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. You're listening to WNSP. Don't go away. Welcome back. This is Kevin Scarbinsky. We're visiting with Kim Stevens. He's an attorney from Athens, Georgia, the Clark County area there. He represents Jonathan Taylor on the charges against him from his time at the University of Georgia, and he's been kind enough to join us on the program and wait through the break. So, Kim, thank you again for that. Kim, I wanted to know, as you said, you're representing Jonathan in that case in Georgia. Do you know if he has representation here in Alabama regarding the charge from Saturday night?
I don't know whether he's hired anybody. I would presume that somebody's providing him some guidance, but at the same time, I'm sure he's hopeful that he doesn't need to hire anybody. If the charges are dropped against him, obviously he wouldn't have to.
Do you have any way to know, Kim, what he might do from here? Does he how excited? Let's go back a little bit before we get there. How excited was he to get this opportunity to come to the University of Alabama and play football for Nick Saban and company?
He was, I don't know how strong a word I could use. I mean, he was really excited that Alabama gave him an opportunity after they did their due diligence and thought he would be a good risk. And I still think he was and is a good risk. But he was over the top, excited about getting his career back on track, potential football career, but also, at school and college. And so your initial question, where does he go from here? I think that's a difficult question to answer. It's because of the expulsion from Alabama, assuming that's how his dismissal occurred, it's going to be hard for him to find any school that will admit him. So it's going to be hard for him to complete his college education if, in fact, he was expelled from school. As far as the football side of things, I would probably defer to the folks that know what kind of football player he was for that opinion as to whether he has any future in any professional league or or not, and whether the professional league and the teams in that league would take a chance on him in light of the allegations that have been made against him in Athens and Tuscaloosa.
Do you know, Kim, how involved the vetting process was for Alabama before they did decide to admit Jonathan to school and onto the football team? And if you do have any idea of some of those details, could you share them with us?
They were extraordinarily thorough from my observation. I had multiple conversations with the coaches, Kirby Smart, Coach Saban, as well as the folks in the legal affairs department and general counsel for the university, and provided documentation regarding the case in Athens to them, at least the ones that I legally was allowed to provide to them. I know that Saban wanted to talk to the prosecutor in the case to get as much information as possible. I know that the prosecutor wouldn't talk to it or didn't want to talk to it because he didn't view that as appropriate. So I know that they were doing everything they could to get as much information about what happened at Athens as they could. Likewise, I know that they relied on his coaches and teachers. I think the president of the person in charge of the junior college in Mississippi wrote him a sterling letter of recommendation to him, and to explain to him all the good things that he had been doing since he was out at Coland in Mississippi. And I think the Georgia coaches likewise gave favorable recommendations to him. So I think they were thorough, and I think that John's a good man. I think that he has a habit of putting himself in situations that he shouldn't be in, whether anything criminal happened or not. I think he needs to be more careful about the people he picks to have relationships with.
We've got another couple of minutes with Kim Stevens, an attorney representing Jonathan Taylor on the charges against him in the state of Georgia. Kim, I want to go back to something you said just a moment ago, because it's been used, I think, in some ways as a criticism of Nick Saban and Alabama, that maybe they didn't do their due diligence or to the extent that they should have before they admitted Jonathan. You said that Nick Saban wanted to talk to the prosecutor in the case against Jonathan there in Georgia, but the prosecutor wouldn't speak to him. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I know that Coach Saban wanted to talk to him because he wanted me to try and arrange it. And I, in my experience with this prosecutor, and in speaking with assistants on his staff, that everybody agreed that would not be a good thing for the DA's office to do, because they had an active criminal case, and the last thing they wanted to do was be talking to coaches when they have an active criminal case that they're pursuing against somebody that wants to be a player on the team. So I think Alabama did a good job as far as investigating, just like the other schools that were recruiting from Coland. So I don't think there's anything more they could have done, or Coach Saban or any of their staff or the university folks could have done different than what they did.
Okay, Kim, so before we wrap up here, I want to make sure people hear you on this point again. You are representing Jonathan in the charges against him. You said 1 felony charge, 2 misdemeanor charges in Georgia, and you're not representing him here in this situation that happened, whatever did or didn't happen Saturday night that he was arrested for. But you said you believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said you believe that Jonathan did not hurt the young woman who accused him in Georgia, and you do not believe that he hurt the young woman who originally accused him here in Tuscaloosa.
That's correct, Kevin. I don't think that he did anything criminal in either case.
All right. Well, Kim, is there anything else? We've only got about a minute left. Is there anything else you'd like to add about Jonathan Taylor before we have to get out of here today?
No, I appreciate it, Kevin. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about the other side of the coin, I guess.
Well, Kim, again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to let you ask a few questions about Jonathan, his character, and the situations that he finds himself involved in. So, again, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
You too, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, that was Kim Stevens. He's an attorney in the Athens, Georgia, Clark County area there. He represents Jonathan Taylor. As he said, he's facing 1 felony and 2 misdemeanor charges. related to a domestic violence alleged incident in July of last year. He's not representing him here, but he has talked to Jonathan since Saturday, since he was arrested on a similar charge, and then those charges have been recanted by the accuser. The charges still stand. The charges still stand. The charges still stand.